Part 1: The Illusion of Distance. You've seen it before. A video on your phone. Grainy. Shaky. A soldier running through a field. And then the sky starts exploding. Not bullets. Not missiles. The ground itself erupts. That's artillery. And here's the uncomfortable question no one really answers. If you were standing there, right in the middle of it, would you survive? Short answer: probably not. Long answer: it depends on a very specific set of variables. Distance, timing, terrain, luck. And a system designed to kill you without ever seeing your face. Let's walk into it. Part 2: What artillery really is. Artillery isn't one weapon. It's a system. A 155 mm shell, the standard NATO artillery round, weighs about 43 kilograms. That's roughly the weight of a suitcase packed for a long trip. Except this one lands at 800 meters per second. That's over Mach 2. And when it hits, it doesn't just explode. It turns into 2,000 to 5,000 fragments. Jagged metal shards, flying outward at speeds up to 1,500 meters per second. Faster than a rifle bullet. You don't hear the shell that kills you. You hear the one that missed. That's not a metaphor. That's physics. Part 3: The Kill Zone. Imagine you're standing in an open field. Flat ground. No cover. A shell lands 30 meters away. You might think, that's far enough. It's not. At 30 meters, the blast wave alone can rupture lungs. Internal bleeding. You're down before you even process what happened. At 20 meters, shrapnel starts doing the real work. Thousands of fragments slicing through air, through clothing, through bone. At 10 meters, there's no injury. There's just gone. That's the kill zone. And modern artillery doesn't fire one shell. It fires dozens. Part 4: Saturation. Take the American M777 howitzer. Introduced in 2005. Lightweight about 4,200 kg. Which is light only by artillery standards. Range 24 kilometers with standard rounds. Up to 40 kilometers with rocket-assisted shells. A trained crew can fire 5 rounds per minute. Now multiply that by a battery. Typically 6 guns. That's 30 shells per minute. Each one creating a lethal radius of roughly 50 meters. Do the math. Actually don't. It's worse than you think. This is called saturation. You're not being targeted as a person. You're being erased as an area. And this is where people get it wrong. They imagine artillery like a sniper. Precise, deliberate, aimed. It's not. It's statistical. Part 5: Fire Mission. Somewhere miles away, there's a fire control team. Coordinates come in. Maybe from a drone. Maybe from radar. Maybe from another soldier with binoculars. They don't need your name. They need your grid reference. A square on a map. Maybe 100 by 100 meters. And then they calculate something called a fire mission. Angle. Elevation. Charge. Wind speed. Air density. It sounds clinical. It is. Because the goal isn't to hit you directly. The goal is to make that square uninhabitable. Part 6: Walking the Fire. Let me introduce you to someone. Serhiy, 29. Ukrainian drone operator. Before 2022, he was a wedding videographer in Kharkiv. New cameras. Editing software. That was his world. Then the war started. By April, he was flying a small quadcopter. Basically a modified DJI drone. 3 kilometers behind enemy lines. His job: find targets. He spots a Russian armored column moving along a dirt road. T-72 tanks. BMP infantry vehicles. Maybe 12 vehicles total. He marks the coordinates. Sends it back. And then he watches. 30 seconds later. The first shell lands. Misses. Second one closer. Third direct hit on the lead vehicle. And then, the rest come in. He later said it felt like watching rain fall upward. Because the explosions were so fast, so constant, it didn't feel like separate impacts. It felt like the ground itself was boiling. That's artillery when it's working correctly. Relentless. Part 7: What you should do. So let's bring it back to you. You're in that field. Shells are landing. What do you do? First instinct. Run. Worst instinct. Running in open terrain during artillery fire increases your visibility and doesn't actually get you out of the danger zone fast enough. Remember, lethal radius up to 50 meters. Shells landing every few seconds. You can't outrun math. Correct response. Hit the ground. Immediately. Flat. Face down. Feet toward the blast if you can orient yourself. Why? Because most shrapnel travels outward and slightly upward. The ground, ironically, is your best shield. It's not perfect, but it's something. Short answer. Reduce your profile. Make yourself smaller than the problem. Part 8: Terrain matters. Standing. Your body presents about 0.7 square meters of target area. Prone. That drops by more than half. That difference. It can be the difference between a fragment hitting your chest or missing entirely. Small margins. Huge consequences. Now let's change the terrain. You're not in an open field anymore. You're in a forest. Better. Yes. But not safe. Trees can absorb some fragments. Break up blast waves. Create irregular terrain. Dips roots small trenches. All good. But artillery has a nasty trick. Airburst. Part 9: When cover fails. Instead of detonating on impact, the shell explodes 10 to 30 meters above the ground. Why? Because now the shrapnel rains down. Your cover reduced. Those trees, they don't help as much anymore. In fact, they can turn into secondary shrapnel, splintering under the blast. Wood becomes knives. And suddenly, your cover is part of the problem. Part 10: Urban illusion. Okay. New scenario. You're in a city. Buildings. Walls. Concrete. This is where people feel safer. And they're not entirely wrong. Hard cover, thick walls, basements, reinforced structures can stop fragments. But artillery in urban environments behaves differently. Shell hits a building. The explosion reflects. Shockwaves bounce off walls. Pressure amplifies in confined spaces. Windows shatter instantly. Glass becomes high-speed shrapnel. And if the building collapses, now you're dealing with something worse than the blast. Entrapment. Buried alive. Part 11: Chain reaction. In 2016, during the Battle of Aleppo, entire apartment blocks were reduced to rubble by sustained artillery fire. Civilians hiding inside thought they were safe. Many weren't. Because artillery isn't just about the initial explosion. It's about what happens after. Fires. Structural collapse. Secondary detonations. It's a chain reaction. And you're in the middle of it. Part 12: Adjustment fire. Now here's where it gets even more dangerous. Adjustment fire. The first shell often misses. That's intentional. It's a ranging shot. Used to calibrate. Observers watch where it lands. Then correct. Left 50 meters. Short 30. Add elevation. Second shell closer. Third closer. By the fourth or fifth, they're on target. Which means if you hear a shell land nearby, and you're still in the same place, you're about to become the center of the pattern. This is called walking the fire. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Part 13: The sound problem. There's a sound people talk about. A whistle. Incoming artillery. But here's the problem. By the time you hear it, it's already too late. A shell traveling at supersonic speed doesn't politely announce itself in advance. The whistle you hear, that's the one that isn't going to hit you. The one that does. Silent. Then impact. Then nothing. Part 14, Survival. So can you survive? Yes. People do. Every day. But not because they're stronger. Not because they're faster. Because they're either in the right place, or they moved at exactly the right moment. Or they had cover. Or the math didn't pick them. That's the uncomfortable truth. Artillery doesn't hunt you. It erases probability around you. In survival, becomes a statistical accident. Part 15, what comes next? But we're just getting started. Because not all artillery is the same. Some shells don't just explode. They scatter mines. Others release cluster munitions. Dozens of smaller bombs midair. Some are guided. Precise to within a few meters. And then there are systems that can fire 12 rockets in 20 seconds and wipe out an entire city block. Which means the question changes. It's not just can you survive artillery. It's what kind of artillery is coming for you. And that's where things get a lot worse. Part 1, Rocket Artillery. Now imagine the ground doesn't just explode one shell at a time. Imagine it sweeps. 12 rockets. 20 seconds. One grid square gone. This is where artillery stops feeling like background noise and starts feeling like a natural disaster with intent. Because what's coming next isn't just more powerful. It's designed to remove your options. Let's start with something deceptively simple. The BM-21 Grad. Soviet designed. Introduced in 1963. Still in use today across more than 50 countries. 40 launch tubes mounted on a truck. Each rocket 122 about 66 kilograms. Range 20 to 40 kilometers depending on the variant. Full salvo. All 40 rockets in 20 seconds. You don't hear individual impacts anymore. You hear a continuous tearing sound. Like the sky ripping open. Then the ground responds. Each rocket carries a smaller warhead than a 155 shell. But that's not the point. Volume is the point. Area denial. Making a place so violently dangerous that nothing can stay there. Short answer. You do take cover. You hope you weren't in the grid. A single Grad battery, typically 6 launchers, can saturate an area roughly 400 by 400 meters. In under half a minute. That's 160,000 square meters. 16 football fields. All at once. There's no safe corner. Only degrees of bad. Part 2, Survival and Escalation. Now meet Andriy, 41. Former construction worker from Dnipro. By 2023, he's in a trench line outside Bakhmut. He hears the launch first. A distant roar like a freight train. Then someone shouts one word. Grad. He doesn't run. He doesn't stand. He curls into the trench. Presses himself against the dirt wall. Helmet down. The rockets land. 1, 2, 10, 20. The trench shakes. Dirt collapses inward. Someone screams. Then stops. 20 seconds. That's all it takes. When it ends, Andriy is still there. 2 meters to his left. Someone is. That's the difference. Meters. Now let's make it worse. Cluster munitions. Instead of one explosion, a shell opens midair. Maybe 100 to 300 meters above ground. And releases dozens of smaller bomblets. Each one the size of a soda can. Each one its own explosion. A single 155 cluster shell can release 88 submunitions. 88 chances to be in the wrong place. And they spread. Wide. Here's the cruel part. Not all of them explode. Failure rates vary 5%, sometimes 10% or more, depending on age and conditions. That means after the barrage ends, the ground is still lethal. You take a step. You don't see it. And then, it finishes the job. That's why cluster munitions are so controversial. Banned by over 120 countries. Under the Convention on Cluster Munitions. Because the war doesn't end when the firing stops. It lingers. Now flip the equation. What if instead of hitting everything, you hit exactly one thing? Enter precision-guided artillery. The American M982 Excalibur round. Introduced in 2007. Cost around $70,000 per shell. Range up to 40 kilometers. Accuracy. Within 5 meters of the target. 5. That's the width of a small room. This changes everything. Because now artillery isn't just area denial. It's targeted killing. Command post in a building. Gone. Artillery piece hidden behind a hill. Gone. Vehicle moving down a road. Tracked. Calculated. Hit. No warning. No adjustment shots. Just one round. And it lands exactly where it needs to. You're in a bunker. Thick walls. Sandbags. Reinforced overhead cover. You feel safe. Then a guided shell comes in. Direct hit. That safety. Gone in one equation. Because precision removes randomness. And randomness was your only ally. Now let's talk about time. Because in modern warfare, artillery doesn't fire freely anymore. It's hunted. Counterbattery radar. Systems like the American AN/TPQ-36 detect incoming shells, trace their trajectory backward, and calculate where they were fired from. Time to compute. Seconds. Return fire. Minutes. Which means artillery units now operate under a brutal rule. Shoot. Move. Or die. A modern self-propelled gun, like the German PZH-2000, can fire 3 rounds in 9 seconds, and then relocate within 30 seconds. Why? Because if it stays, the enemy already knows where it is, and the next shells are coming back. This is artillery dueling artillery. Invisible. Mathematical. Fast. And if you're anywhere near either side, when that exchange happens, you're inside overlapping kill zones. That's not a place you want to be. This is where the bigger pattern starts to emerge. Stay with me. Because most people think survival in war is about skill, about training, strength, reaction speed. And yes, those matter. But artillery changes the equation. Completely. Look at the chain. A drone operator like Serhi spots you from 3 kilometers away. Coordinates get sent. A fire control computer calculates your position in seconds. A gun crew loads a shell. Fires. 30 seconds later, impact. You never saw them. They never saw you. But the system connected you anyway. That's modern warfare. And here's the aha moment. It's not about who's stronger. It's about who can close the loop faster. Find. Decide. Strike. Before the other side does. That loop. It can be under a minute. Sometimes under 30 seconds. And once you're inside it, you're not fighting a person anymore. You're fighting a process. And processes don't hesitate. They don't get tired. They don't miss. Not often enough to save you. Short line. Speed kills. And there's another layer. Cost. A quadcopter drone. Maybe $1,500. An artillery shell. A few hundred to a few $1,000. Depending on type. The target. A tank worth $3 million. An armored vehicle worth $1 million. This is the new math of war. Cheap finds expensive. Cheap guides destruction. Expensive disappears. That imbalance. It's rewriting every military doctrine on Earth. So back to the question. Can you survive? Let's be brutally honest. If you're caught in the open, under sustained artillery or rocket fire, your chances are low. Not zero, but low. If you have cover, real cover, trenches, bunkers, reinforced structures, your chances improve. If you move between impacts, use terrain, understand patterns, better. But even then, there's always an element you can't control. Where the next shell lands. And that's the part no training can eliminate. After the barrage ends, there's a moment. Silence. Ringing ears. Dust in the air. The world feels paused. You check yourself. Still breathing. You look around. Some people stand up. Some don't. And you realize something very simple. Survival here wasn't a victory. It was a result. A number that this time happened to include you. And that's the final truth. Artillery doesn't care who you are. It doesn't know your story. It doesn't see your face. It calculates a location and removes it. And if you're inside that location, that's it. One grid square. One moment. One equation.